Well, happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to the National Real Estate Post. I'm your host, Frank Ray. I'm going to hand you off to Brian Stevens in just a minute, but before we get there, I want to remind you that, look, we just did an interview with a bunch of real estate agents and loan officers. We were asking them what was important to them, and one of the things that was really important to the real estate agents was that they actually do see the loan originators in their office once in a while. And I know that loan originators, they panic with this, and they don't necessarily go out a lot, number one, because they're scared, they don't know what to say, but a lot of times they feel like they have nothing to deliver. Well, look, you can get flyers for free from Remen. Free flyers. And these are designed for you as a mortgage originator to put your info in there and be able to go and hand these out to a real estate agent so you got something to talk about. It's super cool. You got to check it out. Just click the banner that says flyers that you see here over on your right, stick in your email, push go. You have access. You can make all the flyers you want, and it's all for free. So that's a really great thing. So moving along, let's get into this. Brian had a chance to interview Mortgage Banker Association President David Stevens last week, and he talked about a few things, and one of the things he addressed is the role of the CFPB and how it might look under a Hillary Clinton administration if that were to happen. So some very interesting, subtle answers that you can pick up from this, because he does have to be careful how he answers these things. He is the president of the MBA. So, but it's very interesting stuff, and so we'd like to pass that along to you guys today so you can take from it what you will. So with that, here you go. Take it away, Brian.
So speaking of bases,
Yeah.
I think by and large the lending and real estate base, a very large voting bloc in this country, feel that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, has overstepped its authority. And I want to talk about a couple of those cases in a moment. But I think
Okay.
a lot of people in the lending community are concerned that a Clinton presidency is only going to embolden the CFPB to go down a road that we believe to be not only harmful to lenders, but also harmful to consumers. Most importantly, the unintended consequences of these actions right now are the most harmful to the underserved communities. How would you respond to that?
Well, look, I have to be careful here. I think there's a devil you know versus the devil you don't know. I think that many of the hardworking people at the Bureau, who I've known, some of his key staff once worked for me in previous companies. I think there are many who are trying to do the right thing, to put protections in place, but get the balance right. I think on the other hand, there's an enforcement regime that views enforcement to an extreme. And, it relates to your previous point. Lenders want to lend. If a lender is not doing a loan, it's because likely either the product isn't available, it's illegal, or there's unreasoned fear about putback, about False Claims Act, about enforcement based on what they perceive to be risk to their institution. So look, there are loans that shouldn't have been done pre-recession, and the Bureau is an outcropping of that. We can all reflect back and say, yeah, the fast and easy negam 100% finance no-doc loan probably was not a good idea. And we recognize those things, but I think our industry has actually gone a long way to fix our problems.
Right.
And what's left here is a very responsible, really quality control-focused industry that wants to do as many loans for qualified borrowers as possible. I think the Bureau is dancing along a very thin line here of creating policies that actually help protect consumers, which we need to make sure is in place. And I recognize that, and I think they've done some valuable work there. But at the same time, not creating an environment of fear that's based on not knowing what the rules are, not knowing specifics about, marketing and service agreements, or under the know before you owe rule, how do I disclose the date? Is it West Pacific Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time? I mean, there's a lot of nuance here that the Bureau could go a lot further to provide clarity to the industry so we know we're playing within the guidelines that are out there. So I wouldn't necessarily call it overstepping their line. There is no line for them at this, in a relative sense. But I do think they're falling short in the one area of this clarity concern that we've constantly tried to address with the Bureau, because we all want to operate safely and soundly. We want to serve our communities, do as many loans as possible for qualified families, but we can't do so at the expense of risking our entire companies. And when you have vagueness in the policies themselves, and then finding out through an enforcement action that you shouldn't have been doing that when the rule wasn't clear in the first place.
Right.
That's where this thing goes upside down. That's where we need to all be really conscious and diligent to remind the Bureau of that.
So let me ask you about this. I have two more points I want to get to. But in particular with the case with Ally, we saw the immediate past CEO said a bunch of really strong language, opinions and words about what the Bureau had done to them or is doing with them right now. And then you have the case of PHH. Now with Ally Financial, we have an algorithm that was put forward that has been proven to be fatally flawed, yet the Bureau continued to go forward with their punitive actions with them. In the case of PHH, we had a fine that was levied, and then we had the Bureau come in and say, well, that's not good enough, and raised it by over $100 billion. Are those not cases of the Bureau overstepping their boundaries?
Well, look, I think it's really impossible for all of us to necessarily know all the details of the settlement that existed with Ally or any of the other large financial institutions that have settled, and small financial institutions and lenders that have settled with the Bureau. Here's my fundamental concern is that until you challenge these rules, these actions, rather than settle, they will continue to occur. And I think that's the same for the Bureau as it is for the Department of Justice with the False Claims Act cases that are going on.
Right.
PHH is a different case, right? PHH is fighting this in the courts.
Right.
And that's their case is entirely different from the Ally case in terms of what they settled for. But, it's really difficult to tell a regulator amidst all of these settlements that come out with press statements about terrible wrongdoings by these institutions that they're right or wrong when you haven't actually been able to go through the details of the case and see it fought out in the courts. Today we have two cases that are being challenged in the courts. One is the PHH case with the CFPB, and we have the Quicken Loans case with the Department of Justice. And my own personal hope is that they run their course and not end up settling prior to determining through the courts, because if you settle, we never are able to test the validity of any of these laws. And it's a tough one because I've spoken to CEOs of CFPB enforcement actions who would call me and talk through their decision-making process of settling versus fighting it. And if you're a CEO of an independent mortgage banker firm accused of whatever it is, and you believe you're right, you talk to your legal advisors, who are sometimes the best attorneys in the country, and their advice is, we can win. We believe we have a 65% chance of winning or a 70% chance of winning. That CEO has to decide, do I want to take the 30% risk of losing my company, losing my employees, and losing my viability as an organization? So it is really an ugly process. I think the way you solve these things is going back to the points that I continue to argue. One is test them in the courts, and hopefully you get a couple cases to go through and prevail. But secondly, demand that these regulators give greater clarity around your obligations to perform, because in the PHH case, they were operating under the assumptions of an authoritative letter that had been written by a FHA commissioner under the Clinton administration, Nick Ratsinas, that they thought they were abiding by in the structure of their captive, and that turned out to be something that was overturned. And so all we've learned from that process is don't trust the letter to last over the test of time.
Right.
We need the regulators to formally publish rules and guidance with specificity in a formal way, not an informal way, so that lenders can operate within the boundaries required of them and serve the housing market. Right now, this confusion is putting the entire industry at risk, and it's forcing lenders to walk away from loan programs altogether because they are not certain they can operate safely and soundly.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. Let us know what your thoughts are on what David Stevens had to say about all this, and it'd be great to do that for us down in the comments down below. With that, you guys have a fantastic day. Forward, share, and above all, don't forget to subscribe if you're meeting us for the first time in your upper right-hand corner. We'll catch you tomorrow here at the National Real Estate Post.